Well, with the elections coming up in the next few months, we're still seeing many people in our country who are not able to get enough food to eat. This is partly because of our racialized inequality, but also because of the huge price increases we've seen with food in the last 3 years. So then, are there policies that political parties could follow to try and ensure that no one, and particularly no child, goes hungry? Dr. David Harrison is the Chief Executive Officer of the D.G. Murray Trust. Dr. Harrison, good evening to you and thank you for your time. Are there policies that parties could implement to try and improve food security, in particular to make sure that children don't go hungry?
Yes, I mean, our food problem in South Africa is deeply entrenched in structural inequality. We know that. We know that nearly 30% of our food is exported. So that's not going to turn around, and we need exports. But there are things that can be done right now, particularly to protect our children, particularly to ensure that we put in place the type of growth strategies for this country. And that starts with children. That's the beginning of our human capital pipeline. So we've got to start with our youngest children. We've got to start with a series of interventions that have been shown to work. Latin American countries have put them in place. I mean, to give you an example, I mean, we know that undernourished mothers have undernourished children. We've got to identify mothers who are malnourished, provide them with eggs and milk during their pregnancy, and in that way we can reduce the rates of low birth weight, and we can reduce stunting, which is short for age, which we know is very much associated with brain damage in young children. So that's just one example, Stephen.
I mean, we know, I think, around 20% of the children in this country are stunted. Just before the dawn of democracy, I think it was around a third. It was coming down very slowly until the pandemic. We have a child support grant. Is that not going far enough? Do we need to maybe subsidize some foodstuffs as well?
Yes, I think that's right. I mean, firstly, there's a food gap. There's a gap between the child support grant of 510 Rand and the food poverty line, which is the minimum amount of money required to feed a person in South Africa, and that's 760. And we know that that gap has not been filled. As you said, we have a major stunting problem. We have about 10,000 children whose deaths are associated with severe acute malnutrition. So the first thing is, look, we know that we don't have money in South Africa to bump up the child support grant to 760 for every child. But to the extent that we do have money, and we know that government has set aside some money for social relief of distress over the next 3 years, it should be directed to children under 3, and it should seek at least for children under 3 to close that food gap. So that's one example. But we also know that there are about 2.5 million children in South Africa. 2.1 million are eligible for the child support grant, 400,000 foreign nationals, 2.5 million children who don't receive that child support grant. And so this is where we absolutely need industry and government to come to the table and to at least protect children by reducing the cost of 10 Best Buy foods. And if government and industry work together to do that, waiving the profits of those foodstuffs for at least one food label on the one hand, a retail subsidy on the other, that will at least provide a minimum security net, food security net for the most vulnerable children.
I mean, I know some supermarkets already do that for bread, although I think they maybe do that more in urban areas than in rural areas. In rural areas, you really have this problem. Peanut butter is something else you could do it with, although there are problems with peanut butter at the moment. Do you think there could be general agreement across the political spectrum on this? This is not, I mean, we like to have a good argument. I'm sure you've seen Parliament recently. This is not something that we should have a political fight about. This is something we should all agree on.
Well, absolutely. I mean, surely the well-being of our children, if we just think of just how fundamental that is to the future of our country. I mean, the economic power of our country rests in children. What we do to them now is going to determine in 20 years' time what our human capital capacity is in South Africa, and that in turn will determine economic productivity. So it's absolutely fundamental. It's non-contested. You know, if you want to be a president in a Latin American country, you've got to put food right at the forefront of the agenda. Why? Because the electorate there is absolutely determined that no child in that country shall be hungry. And as a result of that political pressure has led, regardless of the political party that's in power, has led to a dramatic reduction in the rates of stunting and improvement in the overall nutrition of children. That's the type of cross-cutting, non-party political approach that we need in South Africa.
Dr. David Harrison, thank you, CEO of the DG Murray Trust. Really do appreciate it.